What I want to know is, by your standards, what is your plan and your proposal? Leave the people of Greenland. And we do not want to be Americans, and we have been quite clear about that. We do want collaboration and deeper partnership and relationship. But I just must ask you, what value do you put on our culture and our right to decide what happens with us in the future?
I want to revisit a video clip that perfectly captures the pure absurdity and arrogance of MAGA foreign policy on the world stage. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking back at a resurfaced interview where Republican Congressman Andy Ogles sits down across from Nadja Nathanielsen, Greenland's Minister of Industry and Natural Resources. Ogles decided to go on international television to spin a fantasy that the United States has the right to treat a sovereign democracy like real estate, and that Greenlanders secretly want to be annexed by Washington. But watch what happens when an actual government minister from Greenland steps in, dismantles the lie in real time, and forces a sitting U.S. lawmaker to show everyone just how out of depth he really is. I'm Neil. This is The Honest Perspective, where we look at facts over posture and sovereignty over empire. Let's get into it.
We do not want to be Americans, and we have been quite clear about that. We do want collaboration and deeper partnership and relationship. But I just must ask you, what value do you put on our culture and our right to decide what happens with us in the future?
I think if you had a referendum today to the folks of Greenland, they would overwhelmingly want independence from Denmark, and they would overwhelmingly want a closer relationship with the United States of America.
I need to rebuke that.
Let's introduce you to Greenland Minister Nadja Nathanielsen, Minister of Industry and Natural Resources, and Donald Trump backing Republican Congressman Andy Ogles. He's introduced a Make Greenland Great Again bill to Congress. Welcome, both of you. Thank you very much for talking to our audience. Minister, your Prime Minister has told Greenlanders today, we must be ready for all possibilities. It's not likely that there will be military conflict, but it can't be ruled out. How are you and fellow Greenlanders feeling tonight?
Well, we are bewildered and have been so since New Year's Eve, I would say. This is an entirely new situation where an ally is threatening to annex or even occupy us.
Are people preparing for some kind of military invasion in practical terms?
Well, people are scared and people are preparing themselves in the ways they can.
Like what?
But of course, we're not aiming at a military invasion.
No, you're hoping that won't happen, of course. But are people stocking up on food, for example?
Well, I've been hearing that some of the stores have been running out of some materials and other, but I think right now we're just trying to make sense of the news of the world and figuring out what is it that the states want with us. We need some clarity in these coming days, and we need to deepen the dialogue that we have already started.
Congressman, you've just heard the minister. People there are scared and potentially preparing for your democratic country to take their democratic country by military force, a NATO ally, a sovereign country. That's outrageous, isn't it?
Notice how quickly the conversation shifts from human fear to pure corporate calculus. The minister explains that real people on the ground are terrified of an ally threatening invasion. And instead of reassuring them, the immediate response from a sitting U.S. congressman is to dismiss that concern as a globalist talking point while throwing out massive numbers about foreign investment. Let's keep watching.
Well, I mean, I think the idea that the United States would take Greenland by force is absolutely absurd, and quite frankly, it's a talking point from globalists who are trying to sound an alarm. Let's be honest, the GDP of Greenland is roughly 3.3 billion.
Sure, and if I may, when Donald Trump...
I'll finish, 3.3 billion is, and yet, China has invested $450 billion into the Arctic Sea in just a 5-year period from 2012 to 2017. So if you're in Greenland and you are alarmed, it should be the buildup of resources by China in the region. And you can look at other countries that they've come into, whether it's the Belt and Road Initiative, or if you look at, their Thailand, Taiwan, Hong Kong, etc. So look, at the end of the day, the United States of America protects the Western Hemisphere to include Greenland, and we are looking to have a productive dialogue. End of story.
Donald Trump has had multiple... Of course, sorry, Minister, do come back. Do talk to our congressman.
Yeah, I just want to say that in Greenland we do understand that we are a part of the American national security sphere. We get this. What I want to know is, by your standards, what is your plan and your proposal? Leave the people of Greenland. And we do not want to be Americans, and we have been quite clear about that. We do want collaboration and deeper partnership and relationship. But I just must ask you, what value do you put on our culture and our right to decide what happens with us in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a valid question. I think as we look, we're entering into a new era. When you look how, open the Arctic Sea is, the Greenland Sea there, the Arctic Ocean, Greenland Sea. And so you look at Russia has, 8 nuclear icebreakers deployed. China has 5. Denmark can't keep pace with that. And so as you have increasing resources by adversaries of the West, and that would include Greenland, you're going to need this relationship with the United States of America. So whether it's the Golden Dome, whether it's trade, and look, there's trillions of dollars in resources there in Greenland for the Greenlanders, for the people. Denmark has not done anything, quite frankly, to capitalize on that for your people, for your country. The United States can certainly do that, and it's a win-win for the Greenlanders.
And do you want to answer the minister's question, which is what value do you put on what the people of Greenland want?
Absolutely. I think if you had a referendum today to the folks of Greenland, they would overwhelmingly want independence from Denmark, and they would overwhelmingly want a closer relationship with the United States of America.
I need to rebuke that.
That is the exact moment the whole narrative falls apart. Congressman Ogles just claimed on live television that if you held a referendum today, the people of Greenland would overwhelmingly vote to leave Denmark and join the United States. He literally invented an imaginary voting bloc to justify American expansionism. Watch the minister put the actual facts on the table.
Survey last year that showed overwhelming solidarity within the kingdom. Of course, we want more self-determination, but we want it within the realm of the Kingdom of Denmark, and I think that should be respected. We have been working towards more autonomy for 300 years with Denmark, and I think we're making progress in many ways. But this is a decision for Greenland and Denmark, a conversation we need to have amongst us. And I think that should be respected. I think the people of Greenland has clearly stated they do not want to be Americans. They want collaboration. And your point about the need to ramp up monitoring and presence in the Arctic, we are in agreement with this. This is one of the reasons why NATO was formed. It was to pull together the forces of many countries and the capacities and competences. So I think that there's ample opportunities to find solutions within existing frameworks, without harming my culture or my country.
Well, in your own words, you've been wanting independence from Denmark for 300 years. How's that working out for you? It's not. And now we have a shift in global initiatives and powers in the region. You can't do anything to defend yourself. Denmark cannot do anything to defend you. It's up to the United States of America. End of story. And unless you're capable, which you are not, of doing that, again, let me go back to the data. 3.3 billion is your GDP. China has already invested over $500 billion into the region, and that number is only growing day by day, and we see these continued incursions. And look, if there's going to be an attack on the Western Hemisphere, it's going to be from that sphere, and the United States of America, quite frankly, is going to have to make, and I think this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship, but it's going to have to become a protectorate of the United States. And quite frankly, I think the people of Alberta would agree with that sentiment, that they would prefer not to be a part of Canada and be a part of the United States, because we are winning day in and day out. And the idea of NATO being able to defend anyone, anywhere, is nonsense without the United States of America. They can't defend their own cities from the current invasion that's taking place from West Africa. They certainly can't do it from Russia or China.
I wonder if I could ask you, Minister, is Denmark doing enough? Is NATO doing enough to protect Greenland?
Well, we've been asking for years that we are perfectly inviting NATO countries and Denmark to ramp up the monitoring of the Arctic. We see a lot of purpose in that, not only for military purposes, but also dual use. So for us, this would be very acceptable, and we think it makes a lot of sense. So I think we can figure something out together, and I still believe in the path of dialogue. What we don't appreciate is is the idea of being sold and bought like a commodity. But we do want to engage in the discussions about more national security for the U.S., which we appreciate and understand.
Because he couldn't answer the question about respecting their democracy, he pivot dropped into claiming NATO is useless and randomly asserted that Alberta wants to secede from Canada to join the U.S. Pay attention to this last segment, because Minister Nathanielson asks the one question no imperial rhetoric can ever answer.
But it sounds
And
like you've been
also
asking...
for mineral resources to be harvested.
Ah, well, that's interesting, because you are the Minister for Natural Resources. How much do you think that is relevant to the US leader?
Well, I think there's more than one narrative at play, and I think there's more than one truth. And I think we all need to find our way in that complexity. I don't think there's a single answer to this question. I think it can have to do with national security, of course, with mineral access, and maybe also with expansionism.
Do you accept that, Congressman Ogles? It's to do with US expansionism?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you have to look at the state of play on the global map today, that it's not NATO that's investing in the Arctic Ocean or the Greenland Sea or in the territory that is Greenland, but it's China and Russia. And unfortunately, we cannot sit idly by and allow that to happen. So as far as Greenland goes, NATO is defunct. It has not had a role. The handful of troops that they're sending there, it's symbolic, and I totally understand why Macron or some of the other leaders were going to want to stand up at Davos and come across as strong in their own roles. I get that and understand that. But at the end of the day, when you look at global peace, the world looks to the United States of America. And what I'm telling you, what the president is telling you, is that Greenland is an integral part of our security and global security, and the time for talk is over. We have to move forward. The clock is ticking. We continue to see China. We continue to see Russia advancing and investing in the region when no one else is, and no one but the United States has the capability or the resources to push back and fight this fight.
And final word to you, Minister, in response to the Congressman, and also your message to Donald Trump, who will be addressing Davos tomorrow.
Well, one thing I find baffling is I hear this about the need to control Greenland and own Greenland in terms of making sure that the U.S. is safe and sound. I just don't know how my freedom plays into all of this, and how the freedom of my people plays into all of this. I think if you talk about freedom and security, that should extend to us as well, us being an ally, Denmark being an ally.
I just don't know how my freedom plays into all of this, and how the freedom of my people plays into all of this. That single line from Minister Nathanielson cuts through every single layer of posturing we just witnessed. It exposes the fundamental blind spot of modern MAGA foreign policy. The absolute refusal to see foreign populations as human beings with agency, culture, and democratic rights, rather than just lines on a balance sheet or buffers on a military map. Let's dismantle this piece by piece, because looking back at what Congressman Andy Ogles did on that broadcast shows you a masterclass in fabricating facts on national television to justify foreign coercion. First, let's talk about his claim regarding what the people of Greenland actually want. Congressman Ogles looked directly into the camera and declared that if you held a referendum today, Greenlanders would overwhelmingly vote to leave Denmark and join the United States. That is a complete and total fabrication. When you look at actual verified polling conducted by top polling firms like Varian for Danish and Greenlandic media outlets, over 85% of Greenlanders explicitly oppose joining the United States. While there is an ongoing, nuanced internal conversation in Greenland about the timeline and framework for achieving full independence from Denmark over time, the idea that they are looking to trade 3 centuries of constitutional negotiation with Denmark to become an annexed territory or protectorate of Washington is a pure imperial fantasy. The minister had to correct him in real time on live television because Ogles literally invented an imaginary voting constituency to validate his own political agenda. Second, look at the economic figures he threw out to manufacture a security crisis. Ogles claimed that China invested $450 billion into the Arctic Sea from 2012 to 2017 alone. Where does a sitting member of Congress get a number like that? China's total cumulative economic commitment across the entire global Arctic, including massive natural gas projects in Russia, does not come anywhere near $450 billion, let alone in a 5-year window focused on Greenland. In reality, Chinese investment in Greenland specifically is nearly non-existent. Why? Because the government of Greenland and its local parliament have repeatedly screened, restricted, and rejected major Chinese infrastructure and mining proposals precisely to safeguard their own national sovereignty and environmental standards. The very democratic mechanisms that Congressman Ogles dismissed as irrelevant are the exact mechanisms that prevented foreign overreach in the first place. Third, notice the alarming rhetoric Ogles resorted to the moment his talking points were challenged. When he couldn't answer the minister's question about respecting local democracy, he didn't pivot to a diplomatic defense. Instead, he attacked NATO as defunct, made a bizarre claim that the Canadian province of Alberta secretly wants to secede and join the U.S., and used far-right, xenophobic rhetoric about European cities failing to protect themselves from an invasion from West Africa. Think about what that reveals. In a span of less than 5 minutes, a member of the United States House of Representatives managed to threaten a NATO ally, fabricate polling data, invent economic figures, dismiss the sovereignty of Canada, and deploy anti-immigrant fear-mongering, all to justify treating a country of 56,000 people like a piece of real estate. This isn't an isolated incident or a random offhand comment. It represents a broader, deeply disturbing revival of 19th century resource imperialism dressed up in modern national security buzzwords. We saw this exact same mindset when the Trump administration originally proposed buying Greenland, treating an autonomous nation like a strategic land deal. The underlying logic is always the same. If a smaller nation sits on critical mineral deposits, whether it's rare earth elements, zinc, or uranium, and occupies a key geographic node in the Arctic, its democratic choices become secondary to American corporate and strategic interests. Greenland's stance has been remarkably consistent across political parties. They are an active, cooperative partner. They host the Patuxent Space Base, formerly Thule Air Base. They participate in regional defense frameworks. They welcome trade, environmental research, and bilateral security dialogue. As Minister Nathanielson clearly stated, collaboration, partnership, and mutual defense are welcome. But being treated as a commodity to be bought, sold, or coerced is where the line is drawn. When we talk about an international rules-based order, it cannot mean that powerful nations obey the rules only when convenient, while treating smaller allies as properties waiting to be acquired. The credibility of foreign policy relies on respecting the self-determination of all people, not just when they vote the way Washington wants them to. If you believe sovereign nations have a right to self-determination, and if you believe public officials should be held accountable with hard facts when they lie on national television, subscribe to The Honest Perspective. I'm Neil. Truth over access. People over profits. That's The Honest Perspective. And that's where I'll leave you.